that reveals what's behind the stucco, right? The plastering. And so that's called a truth window. And you see what is this really made of? And so is the Sabbath, and so is the Shemitah year on an esoteric level, where it gives us a peek into what is this really made of? What is in the deeper layers? Go to our website, which is HebrewLearningCircles.org. Go to Jewish Resources, scroll down to Parsha Videos, and you'll find the source sheet right there. So the Parsha focuses, it's at least the beginning of Behar, is focusing on the Shemitah year or the Sabbatical year, and it gets into all the many details of how we observe that, how we let the land lay fallow, basically every seventh year. We create a Sabbath for the land. We do not work it. We let it go wild for 1 year. And that's in essence what the Shemitah year is. Daber el bnei Israel, speak to the people of Israel. V'amarta alehem, and say to them, Ki tavo el haaretz asher ani noten lachem, when you come to the land that I give to you, v'shavta haaretz Shabbat L'Adonai, and the land shall observe a Sabbath of or to Adonai, to God. Why does the land need to rest? People need to rest, that's intuitive, but the land, why does the land need to rest? Furthermore, why rest for Yud He Vav He, for Adonai specifically? Listen to that language where it says, and the land will rest for God. Why does the land have to rest for God? What does God have to do with the land resting? Why does the Torah use the term Shabbat for an agricultural repose period or repose year, especially since it already uses the term Shemitah, which means let go year? So there's something about the languaging here that may be instructive. What does the Shemitah year teach us spiritually? And obviously this is where the Izhbitzer's genius in depth comes into play. And here we go. Starts by quoting the end of that verse, V'shavta haaretz Shabbat L'Adonai. And the land reposed as a Sabbath for God. And it continues, Inyan Shemitah hu ot leIsrael, ki la'Adonai haaretz umlo'ah. The whole business of Shemitah, now he's using that word, meaning letting go, letting the land go fallow, is a sign for Israel that the land is for or belongs to, the land and its fullness belongs to God. Ki l'Adonai haaretz umlo'ah. And let me just say that he's using a verse. He's actually going to string together a few verses from different places in the Torah in a very sweet way. He's doing it kind of subtly. And this is a quote, Ki l'Adonai haaretz umlo'ah, is from the Psalms, Psalm 24, verse 1. Notice here, if you're familiar with the liturgy of Beini uven bnei Israel, ot hi le'olam, that this is said about the Sabbath, the real Sabbath, that it is a sign between myself, God, and the people of Israel for eternity. right? So he's going to that same language. He's already weaving in the connection between this Sabbath and this Sabbath of the land. And as it is brought in the Holy Zohar, and he's quoting here from Bereshit Gimel, Genesis chapter 3, in the Zohar commentary. Sheyesh atvan rav ravin ve'atvan zeirin. There is, in the Torah scroll, there are letters that are small, and every now and then there are letters that are big. For instance, like in the Shema Israel, the Ayin of the Shema is enlarged, and in the Dalet of Echad, Shema Israel, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Echad, and you see that throughout the Torah scroll, and that's what he's referring to. Some of the letters appear large, some of the letters appear small, says the Zohar. And the Zohar continues, Atvan Zeirin Hu Shabbat. The small letters are representing Shabbat, the regular, the Sabbath, right, the weekly Sabbath. Ki Shabbat hu ot l'Yisrael, because the Sabbath is assigned to Israel. And this is again the quote from Exodus chapter 21, verse 17, where it says, "B'ni u'b'nei Israel," between me and the people of Israel. It's an eternal sign, or you could say covenant. And that is why the small letter is the Sabbath, but the same word has those two meanings. It both means letter and also means a sign. So, because the Torah tells us that the Sabbath is a sign for Israel, eternal sign, that is why the Zohar tells us that the small letters are a sign for the Sabbath. Why? Hashem Yitbarach hu hapoel kol davar. Because the Holy One, blessed be, is the force between any and all action. Umipeulot adam lo yaseh shum davar. And human action alone amounts to nothing. So let's try to get the idea here. So the sign is that there's something about the Sabbath that comes to teach us, according to the Zohar, that contrary to appearances, behind every action, every human action, there's actually a divine force or divine intentionality, or that's what's called an esoteric theology that may be challenging for some of us. You may ask, what about free choice, etc.? And we'll come back to that. And the Zohar continues, Ve'atvan rav ravin hu shmita. And the large letters in the Torah represent the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year that this parsha is all about. Ki kasher yavru sheva shanim, יכרח להיות שנה שלמה שיתראה בה כי לאדוני הארץ. He says that in a sequence of 7 years, it is necessary that there is a whole year that shows us ki laAdonai haaretz, that the land belongs to God. And here he's quoting from Shemot, Exodus 9:29. This is where the plague of hail is being described, and that's exactly the wording. Ve'ein l'shum adam, and no person Koach Pula Rak L'Adonai Levado. No person has true power to act, but only God, only the Holy One. What is the Izhbitzer trying to tell us about the Shemitah year and its connection to the Sabbath? The Shemitah, both the Shemitah, the Sabbatical year, and the Sabbath have a very similar spiritual message to us, and that is to remind us that God is in control of everything. And in a moment, I'll get into the theology as I see it of that. But there's a difference between the Sabbath and between the Shemitah year. The Sabbath itself, where we cease from activities that are survival or creativity related. So one day every week, the practice is let us stop our efforts in the world, become effortless or doing less, so we can recognize that behind our efforts, there's actually a higher order of activity that we're just a part of. So the Sabbath is revealing the illusion of free choice. By the way, it's an important illusion, and it's an important. It's by design. It's deliberate that we live in the illusion of free choice and the ability to act, and that we're supposed to. This is what we're called to do. But every seventh day, we stop to recognize that while we think our actions are so powerful and so meaningful, and so it's really just a part of a much bigger picture, where there's a higher intelligence that is working through us. That is in the way of action. During the sabbatical year, we get to see that the land itself, not only our actions, but the actual physical universe that we inhabit, that we work within, that we act upon, right? So it's not only that our actions and our sense of ourself is most of the time, as it should be, distorted, but the world itself, the land itself, is also an illusion. It does not belong to us as we perceive, as we think. We think that the land is there for us to exploit and extract from and make into things, and and for us to survive and thrive and create comfort and protection and sustenance and etc. The sabbatical year comes to remind us that the land doesn't need us, and it's not there for us. It's really there for a higher order of intelligence. And anything that we do to the land or with the land does not really compare to the source of the creation of the land itself. Where I'm going is I'm trying to enter the portal of the recognition of a much greater order that our mind, is hardly able to wrap itself around. And both the Sabbath and the Shemitah year, by the way, what happens during the Shemitah year or the sabbatical year is it's kind of like a rewilding. We let the land go wild, do what it would have done, and we're talking about agricultural land, right? We let it do what it would have done if we were not around, right? We let our field just do its thing on its own. let God be the farmer for that year. Right? And that's a reminder to us, right? That's a stepping back perhaps into the hunter-gatherers stage of human evolution, which came before the agricultural age, and where we get to see the world as it was created originally, as its ecology, and as nature is designed to operate and to offer sustenance and protection and comforts and all of that without our deliberate intervention in our creativity and our our amazing skill to develop and make something of the earth. And by the way, this is not talking only about biblical times. Even today, even our smartphone, where does that come from? It comes from the earth, right? We excavate rare metals and less rare metals and different materials, and we manipulate them, and we make that into amazing technology. But all that comes from the earth, right? And the Shemitah year is a time to step into the portal of what is it like? What is the origin of all this before we have applied our intelligence to it? And I'll conclude by saying that both the Shemitah year and the Sabbath are like what we call a truth window. And you may know people who have interesting kind of buildings, especially people who, this is very common for people who do straw bale homes or earth bag homes, sandbag homes, whatever you call those. And often what they'll do, they'll, on the wall, will have a window with maybe a little, either with a glass or with a little kind of like a little small cabinet door that opens up, or just nothing at all, that reveals what's behind the stucco, right? The plastering. And so that's called a truth window. And you see what is this really made of? And so is the Sabbath, and so is the Shemitah year on an esoteric level, where it gives us a peek into what is this really made of? What is in the deeper layers, or the higher layers, you could say. And that is the Holy One, blessed be, the Creator, right? Our creativity draws from a larger order, intelligent creativity, according to Kabbalah and the Izhbitzer. And one of the sweet things that he does here is that he he's weaving these different verses in his commentary, Ki L'Adonai ha'aretz from Exodus, L'Adonai ha'aretz from Lo'ah from Tehillim, and our verse here where it says V'shavta ha'aretz Shabbat L'Adonai, and the land reposed as a Sabbath to God. And he ties it all together to show that according to the Torah and according to obviously the more mystical understanding of the Torah, the earth was always intended to be an earth by design for the higher power, right? We're guests on the earth. And I think that gives us perspective, a much needed perspective. And finally, with this, I'm going to wrap it up. If you look at those last four words of the verse, V'shavta ha'aretz Shabbat L'Adonai, and you scramble them, you actually get those verses that I just quoted from the Psalms and from Exodus. So you could have read, instead of V'shavta ha'aretz Shabbat L'Adonai, you could have read V'shavta Shabbat L'Adonai ha'aretz. And there was a repause, showing that the earth is for and from the Holy One. And I think that in our time, especially, this is such an important perspective, to remember that it's really detrimental. It's sacrilegious for us to be exploiting and destroying the earth the way it is, as if it belongs to us. May we all be blessed with that awareness as we all move towards the great tikkun, the repair of the world, and the coming into a perspective that's really holy and really wholesome. And with that, we're going to end. Thank you for learning Torah with us here today. Shalom for now.
Today, thank you, everybody. Again, click subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything. We really appreciate that. Like to have that extra layer of connection with you. Like and subscribe. Come back.
Mayim rabim lo yuklu